Hello, my friends. In this video, a lot has come on my mind over the last couple weeks, especially with being able to really understand and pinpoint the days that we're living in and what it actually means for us. So, what I'm going to do here, and I say this in management, I'm going to give you a 9,000 yard view of a whole bunch of different things that I've come to understand and come to see, and my thoughts on things, and what it actually is and what things mean. So from this kind of a view, if there's anything in particular that I kind of just go over with a little bit, if you want to hear more about it, just ask, and I will give you a little more in-depth of what I've understood of these things. What I've come to recognize is to pass the time in this generation. It's truly difficult, because whenever you're really in the Lord in these days, you realize every person around you, every person you're listening to, there's not a single one of them that actually understand what's going on. And I'll explain why that is. So people that do have an understanding of the reality that we're living in, eventually it gets to the point, like I described with the pregnancy of the woman, where she's very deeply pregnant and she just becomes almost unbearable to things happening. That's kind of the point that I've got. Listening to people talk without understanding has become nearly unbearable for me. So I find the things that I used to be able to pass the time listening to, I can't even listen to them anymore because I see what's happening. I see what they're doing. I see that they're doing the bidding of Satan rather than doing the bidding of God. They're doing it for profit. They're doing it for glory. They're doing it for fame. Whatever they do it for, whatever the reason is, I see that they can't see the 9,000 yard view because they're so fixated on something right in front of their nose. And because they're so fixated on something right in front of their nose, they can't see anything. It's like a plank being stuck right in the middle of your eyes. All you're looking at's that plank. You can't see nothing else, so you stumble and walk right into walls. That's how I view the people who speak in this generation. It's not that they're not intelligent. It's that they don't have any understanding. And they don't have any understanding because they're living in ignorance of what we're actually witnessing in the world. So the first thing I'm going to kind of get into here, America's missing money. So it was reported, I believe it was in 2018, that somewhere we lost $21 trillion worth of money. $21 trillion from the government could not be accounted for. And by now, that's of course been multiplied, as every single year you lose more and more and more. Now, did we really lose it? Did it just go poof and vanish? Or were they actually hiding that money in various programs like they always do in order to do something, such as construct something like these DUMBs, deep underground military bases as they're called? I believe it was from the Animal Farm. There was a quote that was, all pigs or all animals are created equal, but some are more equal than others. That's following the motto of communism. When you're dealing with the people in the world who are on the elite scale, as we call them, they are more equal than you and I are. They can get away with things we cannot. And this is clear. We understand that. There's no true equality, and there can't be. There can't be in a fallen state of human being. There really can't be, because living requires killing. That's just the nature of this state that we live in. So there's always going to be some form of inequality somewhere. But inequality in these days have been multiplied, where we had that utopia as close as it could be in the human flesh in America just one generation, 2 generations ago. That equality existed. I said the 90s were like the Goldilocks era. Now that's totally gone. It's totally reversed on the opposite scale. And I'm going to explain to you that that was done intentionally so that you are focused on things that have no importance and do not see what is actually happening. And I fell in line with this too, is I've had to be brought out of everything. I've been allowed to fall into everything so that I could recognize it when God pulled me out of it. That's how I can explain these things. So you think some of that $21 trillion went to these underground bases? Well, of course, absolutely. They are preparing their way out of judgment because they have understanding that we do not get as being less equal than them. all of these scientific studies that they've done, the different experiments that they've done, they recognize things that they do not tell the public. They keep the people in the dark. But what's most amazing about that is that I don't live in the darkness. I don't need to know their experiments. I don't need to know their research. I don't need to know any of that, because I had God tell me what's happening. And by God giving me His word on what's happening, I know exactly what they're doing, even if I don't know the details or the extent of what they're doing. I know they're doing the things they're doing because they're expecting something. They know by the Spirit itself, by the demonic presence that is within inside of them, that Jesus Christ is coming back and that judgment, destruction is coming to them. They know that. So they are preparing to escape that judgment. They're building their bunkers. They're building their bases. They're trying to build their way to be able to escape that judgment that is to come. You got Elon Musk building rocket ships, Jeff Bezos building rocket ships. Again, people who are elite, meaning that they're more equal than you and I are. They're plotting their way out of it by going to a different planet, by going to the moon, wherever they're going to try to go. And they're all doing this because there is a cataclysmic event coming that they've known about for a period of years, decades. There's lots of studies and reports that became declassified out of the CIA that they've known about the cataclysmic event that is coming for the last 50, 60 years. But of course, everything is done, as far as the nations of the world go, as far as prioritizing the most important over the least important. We got 350, 330 million people living in America. Over the world, there's almost 8 billion. Can they build enough space in their bunkers to house all 8 billion of those people? Absolutely not. So what are they going to do? Just like a government will do. They will prioritize the most important people that are going to get their spots in the bunker, and they will leave out everybody else. So it comes in order of prioritization, and you and I are not a priority for them. They make their own priority list based off of continuity of government. We have that out in the open. The continuity of government is saying that we will protect this person, this person, this person, this person at all costs. And if the person before them perishes, then they come into that position. That's the same way that these bases and underground bunkers and all these things are prepared. It's for people of higher priority. So what do they need to do in order to keep 8 billion people in darkness about what's actually happening to them right in front of their eyes? Well, they must push things on them. They must push social conflicts and conflicts between right and left, and do all of these crazy things that we see happening in society right now, where people are at each other's throats for no reason whatsoever, other than they've been told to be at each other's throats by propaganda, by them. They're forcing all of us to live in a bubble, in a cloud of darkness, so that we deny what's actually happening around us that we can even physically see. Why does Jesus describe in Matthew 24, there will be earthquakes, pestilence, wars, rumors of wars, so on and so forth? We all know what he spoke. Why does he declare all of those things of the end? Because you're literally watching it happen right now. That's why I don't live in darkness of the days we're living in. We're seeing the signs that the world that we inhabit is dying. And you know what this world is? This world is like a pregnancy. We are pregnant. The world being pregnant, like the womb of Mary was pregnant with Jesus. The world that we live in is the womb. And we are about to be born out of that womb, those who know the Lord. And that woman dies in childbirth. You know, when Sarah was 90 and she got pregnant and the promise went to Abraham, that's what happens at the end. The woman, the world dies, but her baby lives. That's the whole concept, the whole premise of Abraham's promise in its final form, is that we are born into a new world as children of God rather than in this fallen state that we are now. We receive our new transformed bodies in that new world. This one perishes, one is born in its place, and we inhabit that world. The pregnant woman right now that we are living in, the world itself, is dying in childbirth. And I understand that based off of the Lord. But They understand this based off of the physical signs of the world itself. Look at the changes in the sun over the last 15 years even. Just look at that. They say, well, every 11 years we have a sun cycle, every this we have this cycle, every this cycle. Do you not see the videos of looks like circular objects up pulling energy out of the sun, and all these things floating around the sun, and all these solar flares that we're getting into? Do we not look at those things and realize that it doesn't matter what they tell us is normal? Those things are not normal. Those did not happen before, or somebody would have recognized it. But yet they tell us it's normal and keep us in this darkness because they realize that during this cataclysmic event, if they're going to escape it, not everybody's going to be able to. We got to let some of them go in order to protect those who are the most equal. So you think some of that $21 trillion went to these bases that they're building, went to these spaceships that they're building to try to escape the judgment that God says is coming? They're trying to escape it, and they're trying to lull you into a false sense of security that everything is fine, everything's okay. We're just going through growing pains with equality and these social justice issues. That's what you need to focus on, so you don't see the changes in the physical world around you. We have flooding in the same week that we have drought conditions. Things that never happened before. But we think, oh, it's just normal, it's okay, it's a cycle, it'll pass, and things will go back to the way it was. And that's why it was written that sudden destruction comes upon the people. They're overtaken by it. They don't realize it because they're spending all their time focusing on things that are not important and that do not matter. And they've known about all of these cycles of the earth, per se. And Jesus likened everything to crops and plants. Lots of parables about those. And why? Because if you really think about this, if you plant a seed in the spring, you know it's going to germinate, you know it's going to grow, and it's eventually going to produce its fruit. And in the summer, you're going to pick that crop. You're not going to pick a crop that's planted in the spring in the fall. By then, it's too late. You're not going to plant a crop that is going to be harvested in the summer, in the spring, and then plant it next year. It's not going to grow back. You are going to put a seed in the ground and know by what that seed is that it's going to grow and develop into a fruit at the time you expect that it's going to grow and develop it into a fruit. And why are we, what biblically Jesus speaks of, why are we called plants? And there's a time of harvest, because the fallen state of man in itself, when it's planted as a seed, God knows when he plants that seed in the spring, in the summer it's going to be harvested. There's a time, an expiration date on the days of men on this earth. And don't look at any of the dates that they give you. They say, well, it's been 12,000 years between this cycle, or 50,000 years between that cycle. They have no idea, because God has covered over all of these cycles by destruction. We can't tell. They think they can tell. They think they have an idea, but they really don't know. They don't know the age of things, and neither do we. Even biblically, we can't 100% be certain of the age of things, because even in between Genesis 1 and 2, it appears as though there is a transition phase between almost two different forms of men. Like, we can't really understand that, and we won't understand the level of harvest until we actually see God face to face and ask him these questions. But they're talking about the earth as knowing it goes through secular periods of judgment, destruction, cataclysm as they call it. We call it judgment. And it always happens like clockwork at the same time. Because if I plant a seed in the spring, I know in the summer I have to harvest it. Now, it might be August 20th that I harvest it and it's ready. It might be August 12th that I harvest it and it's ready. But it's always going to be within a period of a week or two that I know that plant's going to be ready to pick. Such is it for the days of men on the earth. The cycles that they've come to scientifically understand, meaning just by the evidence of the world itself and what they can determine from it, they know that we are in that time period for the cataclysmic event. And by all of these upticks and earthquakes and plate tectonic shifting, and the sun and how it's acting, and all the planets around us, how the earth just started to actually change its location, time the way that we tell time actually changed and they couldn't figure out why. All these different signs, the weakening of the magnetic fields, the shifting of the poles, all these, so to speak, they're all physical signs of the cataclysmic event that is unescapable to the planet. And they believe that it's coming right now. That's why they spent all this time preparing for it and keeping us in the dark. You know what they did all these years going to, Vietnam and Iraq and the Middle East? You know what the intelligence agencies and the government, you know what they've just absolutely perfected? Was the ability to overthrow populations with propaganda. They've perfected it. And that's what they've done in the West. They've overthrown the people with propaganda so that they cannot even see the physical things that their eyes can see even apart from God. They can't even recognize them because they've tied up people into fear and seeing and discussing things that don't matter when the end has come. So that all these people on the day of destruction will not even know that destruction's coming, won't be prepared for it, and don't have a way out of it, because the destruction that's coming, there is no way out of it. Doesn't matter how deep they build their bunkers, they're not going to escape it. But they don't think like that. They think, I will ascend to God's throne. I will be God myself. I will build my own world. That's their thought process. That's why they try to prevent themselves from perishing in it, even though they can't. And then all these channels you see with all these preppers, for instance, why are the fear put out? Why do they want you to be preparing like that? Because you're spending your money on useless things rather than living day to day as the Lord commanded you to. You're going out and doing all this elaborate preparation and putting your mind into all this prepping instead of focusing on the Word of God and the walk that He gives you. They're keeping people away from following God by putting their mind on something that is completely useless. They know these people have zero chance of escaping what's coming because they know that the cataclysm is so great that you got to at least be way underground, or you got to be off the planet. Anybody that thinks they're going to build a little bomb shelter, 10 feet in the ground and fill it up with canned vegetables, they're going to be obliterated. But the government wants those people to believe they have a chance to escape it so that they don't actually pursue what can get them off of this planet. Jesus Christ, when He comes for the harvest. The rapture, as it's called. They send them chasing their tail around. And they do it intentionally because they don't want people to understand and recognize the truth. They want to be God themselves. So you see, Earth has this 27.5 million year cycle of catastrophic events, and geologists are not sure why. Oh boy, that's the kind of stuff that they talk about. While people are saying peace and safety, destruction will come on them suddenly as labor pains on a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. That's how I know they don't escape it in their deep underground bunkers and on different planets. Paul says so in 1 Thessalonians 5:3. The earth is the pregnant woman, and no one apart from God will escape it. The only way is to not be here, which is in the ark, which is Jesus Christ that comes for the harvest. That's the only way not to be destroyed whenever that day comes. And in the Great Tribulations, the uptick and all these destructions that you see in them, that's the closeness. That's the getting closer to that cataclysmic event. That's what the Great Tribulations are. Preparing for that cataclysmic event. That's why the governments go insane during those times. Because they're trying to keep all the people in the world still in darkness while they themselves prepare their escape thinking that they can. But they can't. The woman is pregnant, she dies in labor, and they will not escape that labor. They'd perish with the earth, and then a new earth is built. But they think they can escape it. That's why they're planning and preparing as they are now. Revelation 6:16, they called to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of Him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. Calling from the mountains and the rocks, saying, fall on us and hide us. This is somebody trying to bury themselves to escape what they see coming, whether it's You know, this Planet X that people talk about, whether it's the Kachina stars that people talk about, or whether we call it Babylon, Apollyon, the destroyer, whatever that heavenly body is that appears in the sky and sets its target on earth, that's what Revelation 6:16 is actually describing. The people then at those times will be able to see it, but it comes during the times of the Great Tribulations where everything is taken away from them anyway. So there's not going to be that path where people are going to be debating about what to do. People are going to be then separated just as it was back in the year 1700. Technology begins to go away during those terrible times. So you literally will have groups of people who are still surviving on the earth, trying to get away from what's coming when the way out of that had already come and they missed it, the rapture. None of these people who are doing these kind of things will be able to survive what's coming, but they are preparing for it, which means by all their scientific research, the evidence of the world itself, they've figured out that we're living in those days. And the people of our days are spending all their time attacking each other and caring about social issues because they were put in the position to do that because they love not the truth enough so that they be saved by it. They don't pursue the gospel. They don't pursue the walk with God. They pursue things that don't matter. And human beings in this fallen state as we live in, the more complicated and complex we make things, it breeds more unhappiness. Simplicity is what brings happiness. This complex world that we live in, it breeds misery. And they've built this world so that we live in that misery and therefore don't pursue the way out of it. But God turns that misery around, just as He did for me. And through that misery brings about repentance, the baptism of water. What is the baptism of water? What's John's baptism? It's your own tears from your heart calling out to God. That's the water baptism, not being submerged in some pool of water by a priest. It's your own tears from your heart calling out to God. And that's why all of these people that I speak about from the churches, that's why they don't actually believe in God, and they're still prepping and they're still talking about nonsense because they've never even received the water baptism. They've never truly cried out from their heart and repented. They're relying on their traditions to get them there. And those who will look at the people living in physical Israel and call them God's chosen people, they lust after the creation rather than the Creator. You know that the temple is your body. Do you want to know just something just absolutely magnificent? To look at the creation of God. Do you know how complex your immune system is, just for instance? Do you know how unbelievably remarkable it is that you are on death's door one day and the next day you're up bouncing around, jumping around? Do you have any idea what the complexity of that immune system is and how perfect it has to be to do what it does? That's God's creation. That's why you have that. He built that. That's something to marvel over. But they marvel after Solomon's temple, things of gold and silver, things that their hands build. So they look to where their ancestors used to worship, and they look to the building, the temple, and they love that. They love physical Israel. They love those things. And they say, look at these people and marvel after them because their ancestors lusted after the same things they are. And they miss actually seeing the temple of God is inside their own body, their own skeleton, their own bones, their own marrow, their own eyes, their own mind, their own brain, their own tissues and sinews. That is something to marvel over because we didn't build it. But they marvel after things of their own hands. That's why they look to them with lust. And they creep into the church under unsuspecting people and they say, follow them, they're God's chosen people. God's got their hands on them. And the whole time, the people follow them because they don't know God either, and they're expecting that this person does because they're in a level of authority. And they all perish together because none of them ever get the baptism of water because they spend all their time congratulating each other about how awesome they are as believers in Christ. Everything absolutely backwards in this generation of people. It's all opposite. Everybody speaking out there is speaking lies. Everybody. There was a video I saw on YouTube the other day, and it was this pastor, and he's talking about here's 20 false preachers in their ministry, and he's going through people like, Kenneth Copeland and Creflo Dollar and all these Joel Osteen and all these ones, the ones that are the easiest to see and not be deceived by. They're talking about that. And then as I'm listening to him speak, I see a commercial pop up, and then 5 minutes later, another commercial, and 5 minutes later, another commercial, realizing that this man who is speaking about these false teachers is profiting himself, like Ananias did. And it's likened to a plank talking about another plank about not being planks. Because neither one of them are true. They're all a liar. They're all a plank. They're all doing something against God. And none of them realize it. They all believe they're telling the truth. That's why you have the world divided as it is today, where I got this truth here and that truth there and a truth over there, a truth over there, this truth, that truth. All truths are good truths. That's why it's been divided like that. Because there is none of them that actually has the truth. Not a single one of them. They're all far away from it. That they've made their own form of truth and they have their own following, just like cults do. And they all believe themselves to be true, but that person over there is wrong. We agree with that. So that they don't ever see that the plank is still in their own eye as much as it's in that person that they're calling out. They're planks who talk about other planks about how both are planks. And that's the kind of things that I said as understanding the spiritual side of this. It's become unbearable to me that people cannot see themselves and see what they're actually doing. They cannot recognize that when they're condemning somebody because they're condemned themselves. They're not speaking with truth. They're not speaking of love. And what happens in this generation is when you understand that there is a cataclysmic event, when you really realize we're in that phase where there's no way out of this, zero way out of this, as the scriptures say, no one will escape it. There's no way out of it. All history before been erased in the same way. There was no way out of it for them. There's not going to be any way out of it for us either. Just like the flood of Noah. There was no way out of it other than on that ark that Noah went on. There was no way out of it. There was no way out of Sodom except for God leading Lot out of it, which is exactly how Jesus describes these times. This event that's coming, there's no way out of it. No matter what you do in the world, no matter how much you prepare, no matter how much grain you store up, you're not going to escape it. You are on a death sentence. It's like being hooked up to a bomb with a timer on it and you're duct taped to it up against the wall, and as soon as that timer hits midnight, that goes off and you're done. There's no escaping that. You've got no way out of that except not to be there when the timer goes off. That's what we're looking at. That's the situation that we're living in. And they have all of us and are attempting to take all of us and remove us from being able to see that so that we pursue the only way that we've ever been given to know is out of it, and that was through Jesus. Everything Jesus said about these days are happening. He knew what he was talking about. He knew what he talked about. He spoke of it 2,000 years ago, and here they are. And there's no way out of it except to be in him and to go with him when he comes for the harvest. That's the only way out of it. When you put all your eggs in that basket and you truly see and believe that, then you will pursue the way to that. Do you know why we play sports and why it feels good to win? That's what this life is like. We're put here on this earth to win this game so that we never have to go through anything like this again and that we can be with God forever in paradise if we win this game. You know how good it feels, in the bottom of the ninth inning, your team's down 3-2 and somebody hits a 2-run home run and you win? That's the kind of feeling that's why we love that feeling, because that's like winning this game, going with the Lord. And to not quit until we win, to make sure that we win, to make sure we're in the position to win that game, and not be blinded by all of these other things out there that they're intentionally blinding you with because they're trying to save themselves even though they cannot be saved. When you put all your eggs in that basket, then you see the list of priorities. Then you really can understand what we're living in, and then you will be prepared for Jesus when he comes. You will have that water baptism, which is your own tears, because you'll think, I've got kids. What am I going to do? Look at me. I've done all of this, and it's not good enough. How can I protect them? You can't, but God can, and God will through you. If you see yourself, you truly love another person, you love your neighbor as yourself, if you really see yourself and what God has given you, the gift to escape this, put all your eggs in that basket and pursue it. Don't stop until you get it. The baptism of John is through tears. It's through true repentance. Do not listen to those who have never repented telling you about how to be saved, because they've never repented. They're not making a straight path. They're making their own truth. Just like that church over there is making its own truth, and that guy on YouTube's making his own truth. None of them have actually repented. They've never received the baptism of water. The thief on the cross, he received the baptism of water. He said, what did he say? He said, I deserve all of these things that are done to me, but this man is innocent who is beside me. What did he do? He looked at himself, saw himself. Yeah, I deserve to be up here. I did it. I did all of those things. This punishment is just for me. He saw himself and cried out, but that man didn't. He repented. Whenever he did that, that's why Jesus told him he was going to see him in paradise. Because he repented, the baptism of water. When you receive the baptism of water, what can come next? Then the baptism of spirit. But you have all these people out in the world telling you a whole bunch of things, and they've never themselves even received the baptism of water. And you have the world in the state that it's in with no way out of it other than Christ. You put all your eggs in that basket on the great blessed hope, and you will be received when he comes. Just barely. We who don't deserve it. We deserve the punishment and the just crimes that has happened in this world. I put Jesus on the cross. I have done wrong in my life. I have been blind in my life. I have done all of these things. I deserve the punishment. But Jesus didn't. And he gave us the way out of it, even though we don't deserve it. Which is why when he comes, I will see him that day in paradise, and so will you. If we can only believe this and win that game. We are the thief on the cross. We are the ones who barely escape the tribulations, because I just was baptized 7 years ago. And it's already here now. How close is the tribulations now compared to what it was 7 years ago? I just barely escaped it. And if we put all those eggs in one basket, which is Jesus Christ, then you understand the whole rest of the world and why everything is the way it is. It makes believing it so much easier. It makes seeing it so much easier to realize just how much darkness and blindness has been put over this world so that it doesn't escape the fate of the world, the woman who dies in childbirth. Someone who is perishing wants to bring someone else along with them. That's the spirit of Satan, the spirit of Antichrist. Somebody who is going down to their destruction wants to take as many people down to the destruction as they can with them. And that's what all these people are doing in the world. And the way out of that is to truly see yourself, be baptized by your own tears, and then receive the gift of the Holy Spirit. The pardon from this cataclysm that's coming, that no one is going to escape no matter how much they've prepared for it. And again, if anybody wants to hear anything as far as being more in depth on any of these topics, it's very hard to put anything in any kind of condensed video of putting a lot of different topics out there of my thoughts and my understandings and the things I've walked. Just ask. And then I will do something else with that. But I understand just waiting in this time period. It's like being the pregnant woman at the end of that pregnancy. She's ready to pop. Everything's become unbearable. I understand how unbearable it is to hear people lie all day long without even knowing it. And I would be more than happy to speak on some of these things just to help somebody pass the time as we wait for the Lord in these last days. God bless.